Let's see if you all can put that in the chat.
You've given some clues, isn't it?
So, anyone, even just the one that you probably know for a fact that exists for the 9 healthy lifestyle habits? So, one of them that I'll give you all, I'm sure you probably would have picked, is movement, just naturally moving your body. And we're going to talk about these 9. But I say purposefully, naturally moving your body, not so much where you're having to go to the gym. Although, if you do that, that's fine, but not something that you have to get in your car and drive to, but naturally moving your body. We'll talk about that. Anyone else has um, the other 8 healthy habits? Okay, so I'm going back and forth to, alrighty. Well, I think our audience is quiet today, and so it'd be nice if you all can let me know who's on watching us or listening to us and tell us where you're from. But we are going to move on to what those healthy habits are. So the first one is move naturally. So purposefully, I'm actually saying move naturally. And I don't mean in terms of, going to the gym, running marathons and things like that. I think the people in Okinawa and Costa Rica, Sardinia, they live in environments that constantly nudge them into moving without thinking about it. So maybe in terms of just doing their gardening, or that they have to walk to, say, the store, or they're walking to their friend's house, or they're walking to their place of worship, or their house have stairs, or they have gardens. So those are where you are naturally moving. And for those of us who live in the city, I think that we could do that by making things just a tad bit more inconvenient. Instead of parking close to the front door of the store, maybe going walking a little bit further before you actually go to the restaurant or to the store or something like that. Um, Taking the steps, if you're able to do that. I know we're talking about fatigue, but we're going to talk about the healthy lifestyle habits first, and then we'll talk about how you can modify those habits, particularly if you're suffering from fatigue. Um, so kind of park a little bit further away from the entrance to a store, do your own housework or your own yard work, things like that. So those are what he means by moving naturally. So Dr. Matthews, I want to just find out
Yeah.
from you. I know that particularly in California, everyone has to have a car. So because things are so spread out. But I'm just curious, where you are there opportunities to quote move naturally by walking to the store or what have you?
Yes, there's definitely opportunity, and what's good is the government have actually changed the roads, so they've actually blocked off certain roads to reduce the amount of traffic with cars, and so there's lots more cycling, for people who are able to cycle. There's lots more footpaths for people to walk. So they've annoyed a lot of the car drivers because they have to now go in circles where they could normally just dash through. They now have to go around or find alternative ways. So it's
Okay.
been really actually good in a sense that the government has done that, and definitely trying to encourage people to walk more. And so I think it's, as I said, it's on the one hand, the drivers are annoyed, but on the other hand, we've got that the move. There's definitely a drive for people to be moving more, and cycling. There's lots of cycle paths on the main roads as well. They've narrowed lanes to allow for cycling paths as well. So they have been doing quite a bit in the UK, in London, and I live in London, so in London, yes.
Okay. Wonderful, everyone. Well, the next one is know your purpose. Um, I can see that too in terms of being healthy lifestyle. So knowing your purpose, knowing your goal in life, your purpose. Um, some people, I think, in Costa Rica, they call it Plan de Vida. Um, it translates to why I wake up in the morning or one's purpose.
Mm,
So having a purpose is linked with health and longevity. And there are studies that show that individuals who expressed a clear goal in living long, who expressed a clear goal, they tend to live longer than those who do not. Interesting. And I think for those who do not have their own purpose, I think it's time worth investigating in finding one's own purpose by creating it. And you can create it by things that you like to do,
mhm.
what your passions are, what your gifts and your talents are. So I think it does feel good to know what one's purpose, one's plan is for when they are given the breath of life for that day. It is nice to know what one just needs to do to continue that. Uh, so, if we can kind of talk about this briefly as well, just to get your thought about it, I can see how knowing your purpose can be stress relieving.
Mm.
Uh, not knowing what you're supposed to do, not enjoying what it is that you're doing can actually be stressful.
Yeah, I would say, if I could come in here, that, you're speaking about purpose. What I'm doing in sickle cell is so much speaks to purpose, because I had no idea in 2011. I had no idea. I've never heard of sickle cell disease, and my manager at the time said, "Claudine, do you want to represent the dietitians at a newly formed sickle cell MDT?" And I said yes. I had no idea, not knowing that how many years down the line, 2023, I would, have a doctorate sort of focused on nutrition in sickle. And it's been really eye opening for me personally, just making that connection, that this is purpose. It's so, it's given me, the, like you mentioned, goals. It's given me direction as well,
Yeah.
and focus. And the difficult times during the doctorate period has been because this is purpose work. And so I could push through because of that. And I spoke to a mentor in the week, a general practitioner who's one of my mentors. And she said, I was chatting and I was, sharing my vision. And she said, Claudine, it's the first time in years that you are super clear on
Nice.
what it is that you want to do. And I said, that's because of purpose. I
Mm.
now know that this is what I need to be do for the rest of my life.
Yes.
Until God comes and changes this,
Yeah.
this is what I've been called to do for the rest of my life. And when you do have that purpose, and you do have the goal, and the vision comes from, vice versa, but the vision comes from the purpose, it makes life so much easier. So I can enjoy this. I can, because I know there's a bigger reason, and it's because of purpose. So I can definitely attest to that, and it energizes me,
It does.
because doing what I'm doing energizes me because I know it's connected to purpose. And I think, yeah, I definitely agree that that should be number two as well. Definitely, maybe number one actually.
Okay. Well, gosh, thank you so much. Let's see if there's any questions in the chat. Okay. And Etta Carter, hello, hello. Thank you for joining. All right. Well, we're going to move on to number three. Now, he calls it downshift. Let me share with you what he calls it and what it means. I think the bottom line is just reducing your stress, but he calls it downshift. And he says stress leads to chronic inflammation, which is associated with every major disease. And although everyone experiences stress, the world's longest lived people have routines that tend to shed that stress. So, for instance, in Japan, they take a few moments each day to remember their ancestors. The Seventh day Adventists, they tend to pray. people in Sardinia, they tend to, no, the people in Greece tend to take a nap, and the people in Italy tend to have happy hour or siesta.
Yes.
So the bottom line is downshift means to reduce stress and to be very mindful of reducing that stress. And I think that when you live in areas where everyone is practicing that, I believe that it's a little bit easier than if you're the only lone person becoming mindful of how you want to live your life and everybody else is running that rat race. It becomes a little bit challenging to take your deep breaths in the middle of uh, just sometimes chaos. But I think that we have to be mindful and purposeful of our downshift or our reducing our stress. And I wanted to just get feedback on that. So that's what that means: moving naturally, knowing their purpose. And the next thing is reducing their stress. All right. And we have something in the chat from SC3 that says stress is such a killer if it's not managed. Yes, very much so, unfortunately. All righty, let's look at the 80% rule. So I kind of hinted at it. So I want to just know, what do you all think the 80% rule is? I did hint at it if you heard me, but I want to just share, find out what you all think is the 80% rule. So anybody, what do you think the 80% rule is referring to? And I think the hint, if you look at what our topic is today, fatigue and focusing on nutrition, that's the hint. So what do you think the 80% rule is? Okay. Well, the 80% rule pretty much, what he talks about is that you're 80% full. That's what that means.
Mm.
And that the 20% gap between not being hungry and feeling full could be the difference between losing weight and or gaining weight. So not eating until you're so stuffed. I don't know about you, but I never liked that feeling ever, ever, ever. And so I actually, without knowing I was doing this, I think I was practicing the 80% rule without even knowing it, because I actually don't like that feeling. And what was so interesting, I just got back from Kenya. Uh, we have an orphanage there that we started, and they weren't used to. So I was eating my food, and then at a certain point, I actually stopped. Like, I'm done. And I pushed the plate away. And they kept saying, "Oh, you should finish. You should finish." And I had to kind of explain it. Um, I didn't know I had the 80% rule, but I explained it that I really don't like feeling full. I don't like that
Mm.
feeling. It's very uncomfortable. And so I guess I was practicing it without even realizing that that's what it is. So he talks about it and he says here, the 80% rule is a strategy that focuses on taking things out of everyday diets instead of putting more things in.
Mm.
Um, so in Japan, they stop eating when their stomach is 80% full. You can also replace your big tableware. So you can also have smaller plates. I've always said as well, you should get food on your plate that is the size of the palm of your hand. It
Mm.
shouldn't be any bigger than that in terms of what it is that you're eating, in terms of the different portions, sizes. So people in the blue zones areas eat their smallest meal in the late afternoon or early evening and then don't eat any more the rest of the day. So that's what the 80% rule is.
If I could just say something, just in this point, I guess just on the from a dietetic, dietitian's perspective, and
Yes,
this is obviously talking in the context of health, but for some patients, depending on their health status, they may need a little bit more because they're lacking certain nutrients, or they're lacking protein, or they're lacking energy. So just to say at this point, and I guess you'll be touching on malnutrition later on, but
yes.
just for perspective, because I think nutrition in sickle has generally been spoken about in the context of health, and the other side has not always been considered. So I just wanted to highlight that for some patients there may be an occasion where, if they see the dietitian or nutritionist, or that there may be slight adjustments during that period of maybe being unwell, or illness, and so just to be aware of that as well.
Oh,
But still within that, I guess the 80% rule, like usually if patients have malnutrition, we would advise to have little and often. So you're not necessarily sort of
often.
wanting to feel sickly full, but you're just creating more opportunity for
Yes.
food, for you to take food in. So
Yes.
it's just that perspective.
And that's it as well, eating smaller meals, but more often throughout the day.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, the fifth one he talks about is plant slant. I think you guys know what that is. And that just means that you're leaning more towards plant based than you are in terms of beef, and or even just eating lean meats. And that's uh, pretty much what that is. That in these blue zones, they had more, they were leaning more towards being plant based. And in terms of the food, the fish, it was lean, and it wasn't that much. It may have occurred maybe once a week. It's little. It's like a condiment. It wasn't part of the main meal in terms of the meat, and so um, he talks about things like focusing on eating nuts. I know I do. Oh gosh, the walnuts and the almonds, what have you, sunflower seeds. A handful a day can give you an extra 2 to 3 years of life expectancy. This is what David Buettner says. So I'm going to repeat that. You can also focus on eating nuts. A handful a day can give you an extra 2 to 3 years of life expectancy. So wasn't aware of that. But nuts, that's not, we're talking raw. We're not talking about the ones that have salt and the ones that have oil.
Right.
So sunflower seeds or the cashews or the almonds and the walnuts, um, that he said that that's actually very helpful. All right. Let's talk about the last three. So friends at five, positive pack, and belong. This has a lot more to do with having people in our lives. And I do want to talk about that because one of the things that we do know for those with sickle cell disease living with it can be an isolating experience, um, very, very challenging for people to understand. A lot of people don't have a lot of friends with that pack. But let's talk about what he says it is, and then maybe how we can help be able to create that. So the first one is friends at five. So friends at five, he says, friends at five spark more happiness by sharing your day with others. So whether you sit down together for a meal or meet up for a cup of tea or coffee, the benefits of a daily connection with friends and family come from ending work at a reasonable hour, enjoying a daily de-stressor, and social time. Research has shown that this practice to be one of the traits people who live measurably better and longer um, around the world. So being able to just spend time with friends, that's what he was pretty much pointing to. This seventh one, positive pack, that one again has to do with relationships. And so some people can create social circles that support healthy behaviors. Um, some have these different groups of friends that commit to each other for life, for life. So research shows that um, smoking, obesity, and even happiness and loneliness tend to be contagious.
Mm.
So if you're assessing who you hang out with, then proactively surround yourself with the right friends. Now, he uses the word right. I think I want to say with friends who are positive. This will add more years to your life than just about anything else, the positive pack. So, people who are Debbie Downers, you can only take for so long. And when you're living with sickle cell disease, it takes quite a bit just to keep yourself up. Particularly if you're having some aching pain or what have you, and you're trying to stay positive and do what you need to do. And the last thing you need is a Debbie Downer. Seriously, I'm not saying that we all don't have our times of ups and times of lows, but there are some people who just look at everything half empty all the time. And I think that it's time to be able to assess who's in your circle and to have more of a positive pack. And we do have positive people in the sickle cell community. We really do. And so you may want to reach out and say, "Hey, can we hang out from time to time?" So you can create your pack. And then number 8 is belong. So number 8 is all but 5 of the 263 centenarians interviewed belong to the same faith-based community.
Mm.
So that's what he found. Wow. That pretty much everyone was faith-based and that they actually were part of a community. So it says a lot in terms of whatever it is that you actually practice in terms of your belief, and being able to do corporate worship tends to actually have an impact. Next slide. And then loved ones first. This was the first time I um, was familiar with
Mm.
this. So let me read this and then I want to get your guys' comments. So, loved ones first. He said, happy, healthy centenarians in the blue zones area put their families first. What he means by that is that it can take shape in many ways, from keeping your aging parents and grandparents in or near you. So, whether they live with you or they're close by, they're not far away, tucked in some convalescent hospital, but they're within minutes. Uh, so if they're near you, that is actually positive, and that could be a committed relationship, and that can add up to 6 years of life expectancy. Caring for your children is important for many reasons too. And many people in the blue zone areas go out of their way to invest time and love their children to ensure that they'll be more likely to be cared for when the time comes. So, this is what he found, these 9 healthy lifestyle habits for those who are living longer to their hundreds, 100 and above. What do you guys, before we move on, what are your thoughts to the 9 healthy habits? Now, before you do that, someone, the SC3 says, so they eat once a day. No, we're not saying that they eat once a day because I talk about 344, but that their heaviest meal might be more in terms of lunchtime, and that at supper it tends to be on the lighter side. But they're no, they pretty much eat throughout the day, whether it be 3 times. Sometimes it's a little bit more. So yeah, but not once a day. So, any comments about the 9 healthy lifestyle? Of these are of those people who live to be 100 plus.
I think the isolation bit, the last three, is quite important as well, because you see that, even I have a daughter who's at university at the moment, and she's 19, and she's struggling with connecting and making friends, and the isolation, and I see the impact that has on her in terms of mental health and in terms of energy levels and so forth. So I think that's really, really important. And like you mentioned, within the sickle community context, it can be very isolating, when you do have sickle cell disease, for various reasons, the pain, your mobility, and just your mental health, etc., etc. So I think that, in combination with, and that's why purpose, becomes so, you almost, if you bring those two together, it really sort of highlights the importance of purpose, but also that connection. And as I said, I can see it for myself, and also, living in the UK, living in London, but my family is in South Africa. So the integration bit, and helping us as a family to sort of to find our, let's say, tribe, or your world, so to speak, your connection is really, really important. So yeah,
Mhm.
for me, that's
It is
brilliant.
it is important. And I think even in terms of just moving, so it's funny because I grew up on the west. I'm in California,
Hmm.
Los Angeles area. I grew up on the west side, and then when I got married, eek, I moved to the valley. Whew, I didn't want to be a valley girl. But what was interesting is that I felt like I had to start over in terms of meeting people and connecting. And then as I had my daughter, then you have as you know, you have different friends as
Yes.
the child grows up. So it was a challenge just in my own neighborhood. The good thing is I have friends from all over, so there's the telephone, and that's good. But sometimes it would be nice to have friends,
Yeah.
as David Buechner talks about, just close by, being able to just have walking distance, that natural movement, and then
Hmm.
your community of five, your close tight knit. So I think that no matter what age, whether it's 19 for your daughter or as you get older, friendships, connecting is still so important. And I think it's just the nature of living in the city versus
Hmm.
living more rural, I think, that makes it possible. But we do have to try, we do have to put that effort. We really, really do. And I don't know about you all, but I do want to live out as long as the Lord wants me to live. I want to live healthy, and for as long as He would like for me to do
Yeah.
that. So I do make efforts to connect and with one another. All right, so we're going to move on to so that's in terms of how people in these different areas live. And then we're going to go to the next slide and see how we can adapt these blue zones to people living with sickle cell disease. All right. So we talked about those, but now we want to take a deeper dive into FOOD, or food. Uh, Now, I like acronyms. I I think food should be an acronym because we are talking about nutrition. So I just want to get some people are really good at acronyms and coming up. So can you all put, if you have a acronym for FOOD that has to do with food and good food and nutrition? I came up with some, but I'm not going to share it yet. Um, but anybody have an acronym for FOOD? What that could stand for? You can put that in the chat. And Dr. Matthews, do you have any? I know it's on the spot, but I was just curious.
Well, I'm gonna suggest F being flavoursome, and someone else can, an organic, flavoursome, organic, and then someone else can do the third O and the D. So let me start with
Okay.
flavoursome, organic. Yeah.
Flavorsome, organic. Can somebody come up with the other O and D? Interesting. Flavorsome, organic. Okay. Well, why don't we move on to the next slide and I'll share with you what came to my brain. I may add that. So I put fueling optimal overall development.
Love it. Love
Okay.
it. Love it.
Fostering optimal organic nutrition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so flavorsome
Organic.
organic,
Uh, Flavor some organic. Um,
not sure, but it's just something that we can think of, that is easy for us to remember. But the bottom line is food is really important, and it's something that we just like hydration, we have to eat. We
yes.
have to eat. And for some reason, still in this day and age, it's so troublesome for people. I think for myself, I do see it as being very simplistic, and we're hoping to give that to you, uh, in a simplistic way. Next slide. All right. Well, I think many of you all are familiar with my 344. This was something that I came up with, sickle cell nutrition. It's easy. I've talked about it before. 344 stands for breakfast, lunch, dinner. And what I found in my research is that if you eat this way, it actually does, um, tackle, it improves on those areas where we are deficient. So, for instance, deficient in magnesium and phosphorus and the B12, the vitamin A, etc. But by eating this way, you tend to actually manage. So, once again, just as a reminder, 344 is breakfast, lunch, dinner. So, for breakfast, fresh fruit, dried fruit, and healthy grain. For lunch, fresh fruit, green veggie, orange veggie, protein and grain. And for dinner, the same, fresh fruit, green veggie, orange veggie, and protein and grain. And to be quite honest with you, magnesium, you get that from your green veggies. Your phosphorus, the same, fresh fruit. That's how you can manage your vitamin C in terms of your citrus. I
Mhm.
mean, the list goes on that it actually covers pretty much everything.
Yeah.
The only thing that it doesn't cover is your vitamin D, and your vitamin D can just be, as you can see, uh, being in the sun and getting your natural vitamin D, that way. Same thing for B12. That if you're plant based, it's really hard to get that vitamin for B12. Uh, so I actually do take a vegan, organic, spray, and that actually works very well.
Mm.
So a couple of things you won't be able to do for plant based, but for the most part, I would say 98% you can get everything, from eating 344, leaning more towards plant based. Um, all right, next slide. All right. So now we're going to talk about fatigue. That's why we're here. And we're going to talk about fatigue. And so for the last two, the first part and the second part, there was talk on what it actually is. It's the inability to continue functioning at a normal level of activity, whatever that is. And what's interesting is that, for some, not for all older people, but for some, as one gets older, there actually is a decrease in functioning. But again, I think that that can be combated with this, natural movement, that as long as you continue to move your body, that it won't atrophy. Some things may be a little bit slower, perhaps, because of the elasticity, in our joints or what have you, but we got to keep moving. So this fatigue can happen because of our disease, because of nutrition, because of, stress, and we want to just kind of pay attention to that. Um, so why don't we go to the next slide? There we go. And so, it looks like there was a problem with the little slide. So fatigue is often associated with disease, malnutrition or undernutrition, and ultra processed foods. I'm going to allow Dr. Matthews to take this particular, uh, slide and share with you all.
Okay, thank you. So, Definitely, disease is one of the causative factors for fatigue. But I want to just preface this by saying that fatigue is much more than just the food side of things, as the slide says. So looking at disease, things like certainly sickle cell disease, there's other conditions like diabetes, overactive thyroid gland. There's some of the more degenerative diseases like ME, chronic fatigue syndrome. All of those can definitely play a role in the experience, how people experience fatigue. And so in terms of how do we manage that, and diet can definitely play a role in how we best manage that. I mean, what Dr. Rowley mentioned before in terms of, you know, the healthier food choices that we make definitely plays a really important foundational approach to how we manage fatigue. But undernutrition, if you look at the definition, is certainly an imbalance between what we call macronutrients, so your protein, your energy, but also your micronutrients, which is your vitamins and minerals. And so when we're looking at nutrition as a whole, we need to be looking at the balance of both the bigger nutrients, the energy, the protein side, fiber, even fluid, in terms of hydration or dehydration, but we also need to look at that vitamins and mineral side of things. And so, you know, it's on a daily basis. And I love your 3-4-4, what you call it, structure. I think structure is the way that I would say. I love your 3-4-4 structure because it gives really clear indication of how we can include the right kind of nutrients, both the macro and the micronutrients, to address the undernutrition risk. Because we know with sickle cell disease, and I always like to include this in my presentations, is to highlight the fact that the nutritional needs for sickle cell patients comes directly from the clinical features of the condition, because I don't think that is emphasized a lot in the context of nutrition. And it's so important to understand, why do I need to pay attention to nutrition? Why do I need to have macro, you know, my energy and protein foods and vitamins and minerals? Is because the clinical features that make up your condition. And one of the first things is chronic hemolysis. Now, these are really big words. I don't know if you've heard of the terms. I always like to sort of say, you know, there's a learning experience when we're talking about the terms in the context of sickle cell, but certainly chronic hemolysis, and all that means is the rapid breakdown of our red blood cells in sickle cell patients. So normally red blood cells will live for the half-life is about 120 days, so three months. But when it comes for sickle cell patients, it reduces markedly down to like between 16 and 31 days is what's in the literature. So you can see that you need to make more red blood cells on a much higher rate than it would normally be for someone who doesn't. So to make new red blood cells, you do need that extra nutrients. You know, you do need the extra vitamins and minerals, and which is why you have your folic acid supplementation. Certainly in the UK, I'm not so sure in the US, but in the UK, patients do take prophylactic folic acid to help with this red cell production, because your red cells break down so quickly. And in that process, you need so much more nutrients. But within this chronic hemolysis, you know, that happens in your body all the time. You've also got this risk of oxidative stress. And what oxidative stress is literally just an imbalance of the harmful substances that can actually damage the membranes of your cells. And so again, you know, you have to then take in the nutrients to try and combat that oxidative stress that happens in your body. Because if we don't do that, the consequence of that is chronic inflammation, you know. And so there's so many consequences, and that's just one of the clinical features that happens in your body, you know, in a person who suffers from sickle cell disease. And so we have to pay attention to the nutrients that is then needed to combat the side effects or the problems or the nutritional needs of patients. So even your sickle cell crisis, that's something that happens for some people a lot more common than others, but even that in itself can lead to chronic inflammation. So that the vaso-occlusion or the sickle crisis is basically the blockage of large and small blood vessels with your sickle-shaped red blood cells. And that over time can result in tissue damage, organ damage, which results in the complications that's associated with sickle cell disease. And so I'll use an example. Some patients have leg ulcers. And so that's the healing process that needs to come from that. So we need to be thinking about what are the nutrients that you need to take to facilitate that healing process. Yeah. And also chronic inflammation comes from this regular ongoing sickling process. So we need to be thinking again in the context of sickling, because I don't think people make that connection. So it's really, really important that you understand where are my nutritional problems coming from in terms of my condition, so that you can then see, that's why it's important for me to have a variety of foods. That's why it's important for me to understand undernutrition being that imbalance of your macro, your big nutrients, your protein, your energy, but also your micronutrients. And then your immune system, for many sickle cell patients, their spleen doesn't work as well. So they have an increased risk of infection, which means we have to be looking at what do we need to put into our diet that's going to help our immune system work more effectively. And that's why I love, Dr. Rowley's 344, because again, it's structure, but it's visual, and it gives you clear, guidance as to what do I put in, what color have I put in the colors that I need, that's going to ensure that I get the right nutrients in from the food that I'm having. And that's where the variety of foods comes in as well. And so going over to, so that's just three, there's other things. There's the splenic sequestration, and then there's a range of complications. And what people don't also know is that the complications, many of the complications associated with sickle cell disease also has nutritional implications for patients. So I mentioned the leg ulcers, but there's also patients with pulmonary hypertension, for example. That increases your breathing rate, so you have to work so much harder. So you have to, take in more energy, because your nutrient requirements may be increased because of the fact that you have to breathe, you have to work so much harder. And so it's really important, and that's why I fight for nutrition to be part of standard care, because there's so much of the clinical side, the clinical features, the medical side of sickle cell that has direct nutritional implications. And so we do need to have that understanding. And then, just jumping onto ultra processed foods, we know that with the ultra processed foods, if you're thinking about healthy eating, and the World Health Organization gives us clear guidance, and every country has obviously adapted their healthy guidelines based on that. But we've also got the Blue Zone 9 healthy habits there as well. But just thinking about that, you're thinking in terms of calories, your energy, that 80% rule that we've spoken about. How much are you taking in? Are you thinking about that? But also in terms of the salt content, in terms of blood pressure, the sugar content of food. So sort of calories, you're going to be getting calories, but it's not going to give you the nutrients. Remember, I spoke about all the complications, all the clinical features in sickle cell, where we have to absolutely be looking at what are we taking in our diet to ensure that we get the nutrients that we need to strengthen our body and to help us function as good as possible, and help us be able to manage, the fatigue as well. And so definitely ultra processed foods, again, thinking about the nutrients. So what are you getting from there? What nutrients am I getting from there? Are you just getting sugar for flavor and taste? And yes, there's a space and a place for that. We're not saying you can't have that. But we're saying, think about what are you choosing? Think about how your body needs to function. Think about the fatigue that you experience on an ongoing basis, and what can you do positively by choosing good options that's going to give you and replace and ensure that you have the nutrients that's going to help sustain you. And in that process of healthy eating, healthy living, will have a positive effect on fatigue.
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, I wanted to just well done, well stated. I did want to add, though, that's on the slide, just a couple of things.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, for ultra processed foods, it can alter one's the sleep parameters.
Yeah.
It can alter that. And as a result, will lend itself to fatigue as well in terms of sleep quality. But the other thing that I think people probably intuitively realize but not get is that some foods can actually cause or worsen fatigue and lead to mood disturbances and depression. And so, if you're already battling isolation and you're already feeling somewhat depressed, you might think that getting something quick might be helpful. But to be quite honest with you, it can actually worsen one's mood. And that's what concerns me is that mental health is so important. Mental health is real.
Yeah.
And I understand about so fatigue means that you may not have as much energy to put in to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think sometimes people go for ultra process. But I also want to let people know but that the ultra process can also exacerbate what you're already feeling. And so what I want to be able to do is share with folks, what can we do? What can the community do to help you to um, figure out one day or a couple of days where you can cook and you cook more than enough that you can perhaps put in the freezer. And so for those days when you just are tired and need to stay in the bed, then maybe you can then take out your freezer of black eyed pea soup, which is my favorite,
Mm-hmm.
and get that defrosted, and then you'll be able to have that. And so nutrition is also close to my heart. I understand about fatigue. And then just in terms of being transparent, um, so I have to cook if I want to eat, I have to prepare. I also have a very busy schedule and cooking takes energy. And so I actually carve out a day, not it didn't take me the entire day, but a day to say I'm going to cook today, which means that I've carved it out and I can work from home. But that if I get a little tired, I can actually stop, take a break, and keep going. And I have food for the week, and it seems to work for me. That's just me. Um, I want everyone to find their sweet spot that will work for them. But again, if I don't do that, I won't be able to actually have my healthy meals. And I found that that actually works. So I understand how fatigue can also kind of uh, have an impact on even just the ability to cook. Why don't we move on to the next slide? All right. So, since we're talking about fatigue and sometimes people feeling tired, so people do ask, so what nutrients do I need if I'm always tired? And so I listed a few here. So B12, you may have heard that B12 is good for energy. And so um, I think that I have to ask for grace because I meant to put in the foods for B12, and you can see that I have the same. I didn't get a chance to actually put in what the foods were for B12. So B12 is something that one can eat if you're always tired. Same thing for vitamin D. Vitamin D is something that can actually be helpful. I'm going to go back to iron last and then magnesium. So I mentioned earlier in terms of magnesium that there are certain foods, particularly the green leafy vegetables, that are helpful. Iron. So with sickle cell disease, and I'm saying this because not everyone on this attending has sickle cell disease. There's some people who do not. And so some people might have anemia due to iron, but people with sickle cell disease, that is not the case. So that's why I have an asterisk that you don't want to really add more iron. You don't want to take vitamins that have iron in it. You don't want to do that. But for some people, they may have iron deficiency with their anemia. And so they want to increase that in terms of maybe the different kinds of protein. So those are some of the nutrients that you can add. I want to get Dr. Matthews. I did forget to actually put in the different foods. I think in my uh, haste and trying to hurry up and do this,
Yeah,
I to do that. But if you can share with folks some of the foods for vitamin B12, vitamin D,
yeah,
iron, and magnesium, that would be helpful for our
yeah.
audience.
So with Thank you. So with the vitamin B12, and I think you mentioned earlier that for you have to take a supplement in terms of B12 because the sources for B12 is mostly your meat products. And dairy as well, particularly dairy. So meats. You can, and so your better sources. Give me 1 second. Let me just bring up.
I think for those of us who are plant based, you can get it in sea vegetables, but it takes a lot of sea vegetables, and
Yes.
so kelp and sea
Give
vegetables
me.
can be very helpful as well.
Yeah, so you're looking at obviously red meat, dairy products, your fish as well, salmon, um, and and again, like Dr. Rowley said, in order for you to get that in on a plant-based diet, it's going to be a little bit tricky. So you may need to go and have a supplement to ensure that you're getting in the vitamin B12. I mean, with the vitamin D, coming on to vitamin D, Dr. Rowley was referring to the sun. In the UK, where I am, there's not a lot of sunshine around. And so the UK government have recommended that within sickle cell context, that patients actually take a 10 milligram of vitamin D on a daily basis. But again, vitamin D from your diet could be your oily fish, could be butter, could be dairy. Is it dairy? Dairy products as well. So it's important to ensure that you get those foods in. With the magnesium, so give me 1 second again with the magnesium. I'll talk a little bit about the give me 1 second with the
Sure, it's okay. And I'm going to look up mine as well.
yeah, because it's my brain and diet and nutrition in sickle is
It's
policy
okay.
and practice. And so yeah, I do need to just have a check so that I can
And I
give
do,
you the right information. Give me
and
one
no,
second.
I do too. So I'm actually going to pull it up to our audience gives us grace all the time. So
Oh, good. I love your audience.
if you
That's
give me
really good.
a moment, I'm actually going to pull up. Um,
So I've got a list while you're doing that. I've got a list in terms of magnesium. So we've got spinach, we've got beans, nuts, dark chocolate for those of you who like dark chocolate, tofu for those following a vegetarian diet, legumes, so your beans, lentils, green leafy veg, whole grains, vegetables, wheat germ. So those are sort of some of the better sources of magnesium. I don't know, Dr. Rowley, do you have anything else on your
yes,
list that you've.
I do. So give me a moment. I'm getting the foods. Okay. So for vitamin D, I have, of course, the sun, and I have salmon. So salmon is actually great. For
Yeah,
magnesium, I have green leafy, of course, Swiss chard,
yeah,
which is my favorite, spinach and broccoli.
yeah,
Um, and even though it's not listed, Phosphorus, because magnesium is actually the first, is the major deficiency, followed by phosphorus. And I
Yeah,
have almonds, and if you're not plant-based, eggs, chicken, and salmon. So that's what I actually have. And then again,
yeah.
B12, I said sea vegetables, salmon. Those are some healthy ways of getting.
The B12.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's interesting. If you're looking at the list, you will see that there's a lot of crossover
Yes.
between the nutrients for the different vitamins, and that's quite helpful as well. So that if you know you're following sort of a healthy diet, a variety of foods, then you are most likeliest
Yep.
to meet the nutrients for what you need to ensure healthy living and healthy diet. So I've just got the list for iron up here, and again, things like spinach. We've already mentioned spinach before. Lentils, dark chocolate, your red meat, of course, which is your heme iron, your better source. Then you've got things like liver, oysters, but you've also got beans, eggs, quinoa, dried fruit, cashew. So again, speaks to that variety of foods. And generally, when we speak about in the UK, we speak about the Eat Well guide. I know you've got your My Plate as your sort of your healthy plate, but we suggest and recommend that you try and have a variety of foods from the different food groups to ensure that you get the mix of nutrients, micronutrients, to ensure good health. So it is about going back to your 344 again, and the
Yeah,
colors. It
exactly.
goes back to your 344. If you get the colors, those colors in that combination, then it makes you can be rest assured that you're going to get a good mix of the nutrients, the micronutrients, vitamins, minerals that you need for good health. I was just going to say, with iron in the context of sickle, for those patients who are on regular blood transfusions,
Yes.
and are iron overloaded. So, and you did mention that. So for those patients, obviously trying to avoid iron through the diet, and also having things like foods that are rich in vitamin, or reducing the intake of foods that are high in vitamin C and vitamin A, because that actually helps to absorb iron. So you want to not to have those foods in your diet, and drinking tea and coffee actually helps to reduce the absorption of iron as well. And so it's better then, if you do have iron overloading, to have your lean meat, so like white poultry or turkey, your fruits and vegetables. So that would be the kinds of foods that we would advise you to have.
Okay.
Not to add to the iron that's already built up in your heart. And be careful of supplements that contains iron. So again, looking out for supplements that contains iron, but also foods may be fortified with iron. So again, reading the labels,
Yes.
because yes, because iron, there's so many. Iron deficiency anemia is I think one of the 10 highest burden of disease, and so there's a lot of foods that will be fortified to try and combat that. So, but in sickle cell, obviously, just to be mindful to read the label and check that you don't inadvertently choose food that's also fortified with iron.
Thank you. Well, excellent. I'm going to just see if we have any uh, one making any comments in the chat. I don't see that right now. Okay. So why don't we go on to the next slide? Alrighty. So the next slide says, so how do you fix fatigue fast? So sometimes people just want to know. And so I have a few ideas here. Eat often. So we said that earlier. Some people, I know that my dad had a very high metabolism. My dad was very tall and thin, uh,
Mm,
with a very high metabolism. So he actually ate frequently, and that seemed to work for him. So oftentimes you may, uh, depending upon your body type or your metabolism, eat smaller meals a little bit, more frequently. Um, get moving. And you might think, but I'm tired. I'm going to share with you guys right now. There are times that I work very long days, And I find that, but if I take a break and behind my office, there's a walking path, and I literally just do that, I actually feel better. It's almost as if, whew, I got regenerated. And so it wasn't the moving that made me more fatigued. It was the moving that gave me a burst of energy. So remember, I was saying those natural movements, doing the laundry, doing your gardening, uh, you know, doing your housework, moving your body can also actually help with fatigue. Not just there's time for rest, but too much rest can just lead to more fatigue. Moving your body can actually combat that. Lose weight. So if you are one that actually might need to lose weight, you might be on the more obese side. You may want to lose weight. And I'm not into fat diets and yo-yo. What I mean is that if you move your body naturally and you have more of a plant-based diet, that I think that, and you have you eating foods that are nutrient dense
Yeah.
and not that are empty calories like the ultra processed food, that I think naturally if you tend to lose, you'll tend to lose weight and then you'll gain a little bit more energy. Sleep well. And so it didn't say here how long, it just means that you have quality sleep. So if you're able to sleep well, that can actually help your fatigue, reduce stress, can also boost your energy. Counseling, talking therapy can also, again, moving back to mental health, can also help fatigue. Cut out caffeine and drink less alcohol. So, didn't say not to do it at all, but less alcohol because alcohol has can turn into sugar. Um, so just being just mindful, these are different things that can fix fatigue fast. Dr. Matthews, you want to weigh in on this, or do you have other ideas as well?
I think one thing for sickle cell is the dehydration aspect, because
Ah,
it can cause headaches, and it can cause you to feel almost unwell. That can then exacerbate your feelings of fatigue if you're already feeling fatigued. So definitely ensuring that you are taking in enough fluid,
yeah,
obviously to reduce the risk of crisis, but just even the effect it has on the brain, and how, as I said, how you feel, and headaches, and energy levels, and so forth. The other thing to mention is, sometimes in terms of looking at the impact of mental health on fatigue, if your blood sugar levels are a little bit on the, and I'm not talking in the context of diabetes, I'm just talking generally, if your sugar levels are on the lower side because maybe you've skipped a meal, or you've not been hungry or anything like that, that can also have an impact on how you feel, and then exacerbate your fatigue, because we know that with fatigue, it's the mental and the physical, or a combination of the two, that can actually worsen your experience of fatigue. So definitely adding to that list is the dehydration side of things, and it's just checking you, so that having that a regular sort of meal pattern will definitely help to even out and balance out that, but also paying attention to what you are having, and again coming to the ultra processed foods, what nutrients are you getting in, because if you are getting in what's known as empty calories, then that can also sort of long term have an impact on the obesity, and weight, which we've seen can have an effect on that, but also just generally acutely it can make you feel headachy, disorientated, and so you want to pay attention to that. Smoking, I don't know if patients smoke, but smoking is another thing that, again, because it messes with your oxygen level and how your body absorbs oxygen. And we know, with in a sickle context, we've already got low, hypoxia, low levels of oxygen. So just if you are smoking, then that's definitely going to worsen and exacerbate your experience of fatigue. So yeah. I think
thank
just one more thing, is, again, in the context of mental health and just healthy brain to help with fatigue, is just being aware of the sometimes some medications, there's interaction with food and medications, so just your timing of medications as well. So for some people, to just be mindful that if you take some medication with some foods, that can have an interaction as well. So just bear in mind that, you know, if they say take it with food or after food or in between, you know, to take it as it's meant to be taken,
Yeah.
because that in some cases can affect the mental health, the brain, how the brain works, and then that can exacerbate sort of your
Okay.
feelings of fatigue as well.
I'm definitely going to add hydration. Not sure how I forgot that. I'm definitely going to add hydration, and I'm going to add, make
Caffeine. Oh,
sure
you've got caffeine. You've got caffeine.
not to no smoking,
Yeah.
and how that can do that. Okay, wonderful. Next slide. So, what foods help with extreme fatigue? And I'm going to go back to 344. I think it's just a steady, by eating this way, you're already combating the deficiencies. So, a diet with leafy greens, with your fruits, your healthy grain, your healthy fats like avocado, nuts, seeds can help lessen the effects of feeling tired. And earlier, I had mentioned, according to David Buettner, that even if you just eat nuts, that
Mm,
according to him, that can actually add 2 to 3 years of your life.
mm,
Um, but you want to make sure that the nuts are raw and not that they don't have, salt and different oils and what have you. So these are some of the things that we've been talking about that can, food wise, that can actually help with fatigue. Next slide. All right. So I would like, before I share with you our summary, I like to hear from you all in terms of what's the one thing, if you were to just name one thing that you got, that you received from this talk today? We talked about quite a bit. We talked about the blue zone, and we talked about the 9 healthy habits. Of course, 344. So just curious, what one thing did you all were able to receive that you may not have been aware of before? Okay. So doing better on all fronts.
mm.
And okay, but I don't want you to feel so defeated. So if you were to just pick one thing on all fronts that you could step into, like right after we're done, and you can say, I can do one thing. Uh, I received the last slide.
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing that you may not be doing that you're like, I need to do that, whether it's natural, okay, eating in general, okay. And so, yeah, I think just being mindful. So I think part of when people say eating better is, you know what, Dr. Matthews, it actually starts at the grocery store.
Definitely it's the preparation. I think the point that you made earlier when you were doing the slide on, you know, on the food and the nutrients in terms of fatigue, you mentioned a really important thing. It's preparation. And preparation comes, I guess, from understanding. So that's why I like to include the slide on what's going on in my body and what do I then need to do to correct that. And then from that point on, like, you plan and you know what it is that you're going to do, and then you go to the grocery store and you buy. And like you suggested, it's the preparation, it's the planning, and it's the preparation.
It
You know,
is.
it's so important, particularly if you have a condition like sickle cell, where fatigue, I don't know if you were aware, you may be aware of the SHAPE study. One of the studies they did was, there was about 1,000 sickle cell patients. It's a 10-center study, a global study called the SHAPE study, where they interviewed over 1,000 people living with sickle cell disease, and 90% of the people indicated fatigue as a problem for them. So we know fatigue is a real big problem,
It
but it
is.
does mean that you have to plan and you have to prepare,
You do.
because, and
You-
then that community, that sense of having someone, like you said, if some people live alone, and so you will have to ask for help, and so the thing I wanted to mention earlier is the empowerment. Our patients, I like to bring in the empowerment side of things, because if we're not empowered, I had to be empowered to go and do a doctorate in nutrition in sickle, that is something way out there. But I think our patients need to be empowered to ask for what they need, and then take and get the support, and then take the steps to do what they need to do. But it does start with you choosing, you deciding, you taking the control, and then and taking the action that's needed. So I want to encourage everybody listening, particularly if you have sickle cell at the moment, just go away and think about, asking for help. You've got, Dr. Rowley's center. There's lots of people to help you. So definitely reach out if you haven't already connected. If you haven't already reached out, just connect, ask, build your little circle,
Yeah.
so that you can plan, that you can prepare, you've got the support, and you can take that one action
Yes.
from today's talk that's going to set you on the right trajectory moving forward.
Well, and then let me just share. So I don't give it by, well, not even advice, even share if I'm not actually doing it. So let me share with you all how I do. So even though I think I prepare very well, I'm a good but cook, I still have to figure it out. And in total, it can take me about an hour. So I'm going to share with you all. I cook on Fridays. So let me share with you all what my menu is for this coming week. So um, there's 9 dishes. I made basmati rice, Indian chickpeas, aloo gobi, the Indian vegetables, Spanish rice, Ethiopian lentils, Ethiopian collard greens, corn free cornbread, and hummus. I think that's 8. And so when I plan that, I have to figure out what is it that I want to eat. Then once I list it, I then have to figure out what are all of the items that I need to put it together. And these are the prepared meals. But I also make sure that I have my my fruits. So I also bought tangerines. I also bought apples and some bananas. And I also have my nuts. So I have cashews, walnuts, and almonds. So what I'm saying to you is that it's not, I don't just wake up saying, today I'm going to make these dishes. Oh my goodness. I have to prepare ahead of time for number one, what it is, two, all the ingredients. My ingredients actually are part of 344. And so there's something orange, there's something green, there's fruits, there's nuts. But I have to prepare, and I'm sharing with you that it can take about an hour to figure out all the ingredients, put together my list, and then with that list, it makes it easier to go shopping because you're not distracted. You're getting exactly what you need. And of course, I have lots and lots of olive oil on hand, lots and lots of spices, including cayenne, the name of our organization, and other warm spices. So I'm sharing, it does take time. And I do that. I actually take the time because it's important for me. I actually like feeling good. And so this is something that I think I can do for myself. So here I see that Etta said I could eat more green veggies. Okay. And so uh, there's this wonderful Brussels sprout dish that I found when that's in season. Of course, I love my Swiss chard and spinach. I just made that yesterday as well. It wasn't even on my list. I just said, "Whew, I like spinach and Swiss chard." So, um, and if you like, collard greens, I actually eat raw collard greens into a salad that everyone likes. So, whatever you think that might be, let's just be mindful of adding one thing, whether it's using olive oil or adding more green. I think for some people, it's adding more orange, like butternut squash and carrots or what have you. All right, next slide. So, key takeaways. We talked about how to adopt the blue zone habits for longevity. And of course, if we're going to live longer, we want to feel good too. It doesn't even make sense to live long and you're um, not in a good place physically and mentally. So we do want to develop these habits. Also, we want to prioritize natural movement that we talk about, knowing your purpose. Dr. Matthews, it just feels so good. It's so it's like these endorphins, knowing what I'm supposed to be doing because it feels so good and it's natural. And her space since 2011 being in the sickle cell space, not even realizing it, purpose, of course, reducing your stress, putting more plant-based everyone into your diet. I highly recommend social connections. I think that, to be honest with you, I could be wrong. I think that that's a little bit more challenging than food, in all honesty. And I would like to help figure out how we can cultivate that, even if it's through your organization where people are coming together to get information. Maybe there can be these little pods of people talking and sharing. Again, connections are important. Family first approach also contributes to a longer life. So those are some of the takeaways from our talk today. And next slide. Just want to say thank you and open it up for questions. Um, I do want to say not only thank you to those of you who are listening um, in Facebook Live, but also, you guys are used to our previous two speakers who have come to you, part one and two. I'm just happy that Dr. Matthews, she came to my brain, Mary reached out, and she's here. Yay. And so I I'm thrilled that I could depend upon her and she's here, and we're very kindred when it comes to nutrition. So I actually do want to thank you for being with us. Um, so do we have any questions, comments, thoughts? I know that Etta had talked about having difficulty with sleep, and I know at one point we did have a sleep mini seminar. Um, and that can be challenging. I think that sometimes when you move your body, but also too, if you have so much in your brain, it's a matter of being able. I visually share with people. You just want to take what's here and park it right over here.
Yeah.
If you want to pick it back up, you can, but hopefully it'll get resolved. Just here and put it over here to allow you to have some good sleep
Yeah.
when you finally do that. But are there any comments? Thank you, Etta. Any comments or thoughts or suggestions for us? Well, Dr. Matthews, I'd like to find out what is your takeaway and what is it that you would like for the community to be left with? And um, definitely we want to partner. So if you actually have information on your new organization that you're putting together, it'd be wonderful to be able to share. And if you are still working that out, we would love to have you back where you actually speak just on that so that people have an idea of how they can participate.
That will be wonderful. Thank you so much. I think this was really wonderful working with somebody. It's been a very lonely journey, I will say, in the nutrition in sickle space because it's not part of standard care, and not everybody gets the importance of nutrition, and unfortunately nutrition in sickle has been reduced to just the food side of things, and I think what I want to like just share as well, certainly in terms of my research, was to really open up how we understand nutrition in sickle, because I think many times we don't take the whole lived experience. This was wonderful because you've done what I, you know, what my project, the focus of my research project was, is to look at the whole lived experience of the sickle of the patient, and not just focus on the medical side of things. And certainly the way I understand nutrition, and I've come up with this definition of optimal nutrition, where I say that nutrition is the cumulative causatum, so the sum of the nutritional, the medical, the psychosocial, the socioeconomic, the socioecological factors, all of those factors together, which is sort of what we've tried to do today with fatigue, coming together, that affects the overall health and well-being of our patients. And I think that's really important for people to think about when they're thinking about nutrition. It's the whole person, it's the whole lived experience. And my organization is definitely going to be trying to uphold and build on that platform of optimum nutrition in the context of this whole person. And yeah, so I'm literally just fresh. I think just a few weeks ago, I've registered the organization, but as I mentioned earlier, it's definitely going to be looking at the education side of things, but it's taking it further. So for me, it's really important that we actually train up healthcare professionals, nutritionists, dietitians, to be part of the sickle cell MDT. I was asked to write national nutrition standards for sickle cell disease, and the first standard is for dietitians to be part of the sickle cell MDT. So that's a really important aspect, so that we actually have, if our patients have the questions, if they have the needs, if they have to be assessed, that there's somebody there that can do that. So the organization, that's what I'm working towards. So workforce development, and then partnership working, because again, this is wonderful for me to be sharing this platform with you, because now I take back, what I've gleaned from here, and hopefully you'll take the little bit that I've shared there as well. But we work together, and that's the multiplication effect. So I'm definitely after the multiplication effect, because we need more people to be interested and to recognize the value of nutrition as part of the management of sickle cell patients. And I'd love to come back once I'm up and running, once I've got websites and all of that, to
Oh,
be able to
definitely.
come and share, what I'm doing. And because I said, I can only do to the best of my ability if I know what the needs are. If I don't
Yes.
know what the needs are, and I'm thinking maybe we can do some sort of down the line, do like like a focus group or whatever you want to call
Yes.
it, where
Okay.
people get the chance to share, because we can't tailor if we don't know.
Right.
And also, I'd like to share the findings of my research project as well. So this socio-ecological lens that I've taken to nutrition. So looking at the personal, interpersonal, institutional, community, and policy level factors that have a role to play in nutrition and service provision. So I'd love to be able to share that. And
Okay.
then I've also developed a framework, which I call the nutrition integration framework. So just showing all the components that is needed if we're going to be looking at nutrition service provision development, that we know what we need to have in place.
Yes.
Because for me, it's so important that we give 120% to the patients. I'm not happy. I'm not happy if I'm not happy. So if you're going to do it, we're going to have to do it well. We're going to have to do it right.
Definitely.
And yeah.
So one of the things, so I'm happy that you're doing this because I'm hoping that it'll trickle over to the US.
Mm-hmm.
Here's why I say that. So it doesn't occur here either.
Mm.
Um, what we do here, our community health workers do an intake assessment, and part of the intake assessment is actually if they would like to have more information on nutrition and what have you. So if that client says yes, or that particular warrior says yes, then we will reach out and assist them. So we do
Right.
it internally, but it's not something that they get when they go to clinic. It's not actually part of their annual exam. And that actually is a shame to
Mm.
know nutritionally. I mean, you do a CBC all the time whenever somebody comes in.
Yes.
So you can actually even see on the blood panel where there's deficiencies, but there's really not a
Yeah.
lot of information.
Yeah.
So what I like what you're wanting to do. I know that there's a warrior family that one of the CHWs talked about in our meeting, where there's two boys who have sickle cell disease, and they are malnourished
Mm.
because they're only eating what, two items.
Mm.
And so I definitely intend to reach out to that family
Mm.
to put together. We got to put together something. They
Yeah.
actually live in a rural place here in
Right.
California, so we intend to go out and to drive out to where they are,
Hmm.
because these boys need support. And
Yes.
so we're very, very concerned about
Yeah.
just the likelihood of their growth,
Yeah.
and just their longevity. We're very concerned about that. So I think on the grassroots level, it's beginning with us. I
Mm.
like that you are wanting it to go to a much higher level so
Yes.
that it's just
Yes.
part of standard of care.
Yes.
And I think that we got to continue to work on that. So I'm with you 1000%.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Let me share my good news, my breakthrough news, shall I say. As a consequence of my research, I'm actually speaking at the Houses of Parliament on Monday
Oh,
about
excuse me.
nutrition in sickle. I've been given a 10-minute slot to
Okay.
talk about nutrition in sickle at the sickle cell. In the UK, it's called the All Party Parliamentary Group. So
Yes.
I've been given a 10-minute speaking
Wow.
slot at the Houses of Parliament on Monday
I
to
wish I could
talk
be with
about,
you.
yeah,
I really wish I could be with you in person, but I'm going to be with you in spirit,
thank you.
because that is such an honor. And so, for any of you all who are listening, please, let's put our prayers and thoughts towards Dr. Claudine Matthews for that Monday. It's important. It is
Yes,
important, and yes,
yes.
it is amazing. And I
It,
wish I could. I wish I could be there in person. Oh my
thank
goodness,
you.
what an honor!
It's what an honor. I don't have I don't have the words to express, because that's actually one of my first recommendations from my research project, because I knew, because my focus has always been policy and practice. Because for me, I do not want to look 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line and are still having this conversation
Yeah.
that small. And no, because our patients deserve more. They
Yes, they.
deserve better, they deserve more. And so
Yes.
I have to do all that I can, certainly obviously in the UK, but definitely grateful for these connections, because I know it's going to spill over. But somebody, I'm, I'm sort of starting it in the UK, but you know, yes, I don't take it lightly. It's a
Wow,
huge, huge, huge
it is.
sort of breakthrough, opportunity on Monday, and further to that, my professional body, the British Dietetic Association, I've been linking in with the incoming chair. She got me. She gets me. She gets nutrition in sickle, and so she, because I wasn't getting anywhere with the CEO of our organization, because race, you can't unfortunately you can't turn a blind eye on that marginalization and all of that kind of thing. But she reached out to the CEO of the BDA, and basically they are going to showcase the speaking opportunity that I've got on Monday and on the BDA social media. So that again is a huge, significant breakthrough, because my professional body is sort of backing the call on nutrition's integration into standard care in sickle cell disease by doing that.
So
So
again, we need,
yeah,
you're a champion for all of us, and we need a clone of you here in the US. No, I'm being honest with you. And I believe that there are others like myself who, because of our partnership, we're going to be able to do this together, Dr. Matthew. Seriously. It's something that um, I consider it so simple, yet it's so left out. I mean, doctors eat, okay?
yes,
So everyone has to eat, but yet
yes,
it's just an afterthought, if
yeah,
even thought of at all.
yeah.
So kudos to you
Thank you.
for, in a short time. I
Yeah,
know you know, you were introduced 2011, but literally in a short time, the strides you have made, and so it's an honor. It's an
thank
honor,
you. Thank you.
the role that you have. So this is wonderful. Everyone is saying that it's amazing.
Thank
And
you.
so, what I do want to say is that you all are amazing.
Yeah,
And so, thank
yeah.
you all for being with us on this Saturday, December 9th. Um can you believe it? This is the last month of 2023. Whew,
I
can't
know.
can't believe it. But it's been a pleasure having Dr. Matthews with us. It's been a while since I've actually, you all have seen me. And so it's a pleasure being here. At this time, we're going to just say have a good afternoon, evening, depending upon where you are. We really do want you to think about um, fatigue, nutrition, and sickle cell disease, and reach out and let us know how we can actually assist you in your walk as you move forward with you know, decreasing your fatigue, increasing your energy, how nutrition, food plays a role. Dr. Matthews is available. Actually, if you could, if you can put your contact information that you would that if people can contact you,
Mm-hmm.
um, the tech team can also share that because Dr. Matthew, she just did her doctorate, and so her dissertation. That's a dedication. It does take a while to get through that, and so we have now that is actually in the chat. So is CM Claudine
Nutri. Yeah,
Nutri
yeah,
NUTRI at iCloud.com.
yeah.
You guys can reach out to either of us, but we're thankful that you actually came. And so stay tuned. We actually have, I believe, two more mini seminars before the end of the year. But thank you all for actually coming with us. And so I'll going to say goodbye and good health. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye bye.